Welcome to the DMF. I am your host, Justin Yance, and today I have another interview for you. It is Colin from the At Readers Recap. That is at Readers Recap, and we have a fascinating conversation about books and things of the like, so enjoy. Okay, I have with me Colin from the Reader's Recap on Instagram. How are you doing, Colin?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, man, for doing this. The first thing I
Absolutely.
wanted to talk about is how did your Instagram come about? Like,
Yeah, that's a great question. So, it was in the pandemic had just started, pretty much, which I think a lot of these pages kind of sprouted through that, which is an interesting topic in itself.
yeah, it's
But
it's it's interesting because the pandemic, yeah, really did spread. I mean, it kind of showed us a lot that we can do. That the Instagram doesn't just have to be for entertainment and pictures. It can be also informative, and you can
right.
use it with the. Excuse me, I interrupted you. Finish.
No, that's great. Yeah, no, what's cool about it is the fact that it kind of pushed all of us. It's like, hey, if you wanted to start something, now's the time, right? And so
Yeah.
we've all either we grew in that or we took a step backwards, and I think a lot of us took a step forward. But yeah, I'd been reading for about a year. The year prior, I picked up a couple different books that I had seen, or people had told me you should check this book out. I was done with my studies in college, and I just thought to myself, where do people go to find other books, or what do they how can I find my next few books? And so I set a goal of reading 20 books that year in 2019,
Mm.
prior to the pandemic. And so it was like, okay, I hit that goal. I read the 20 books that, these people that I worked with had told me about or whatever. So I was on Instagram. I wasn't big on social media. If you go to my personal page, I think I have 20 photos, and it's of myself and my wife and my little girl. So that's it, you know. But I had a friend, he was like, "Well, I found this page," and so I went and looked, and I kind of found a couple notable pages that I'm really good friends with now. Um, Nick with Book Thinkers, Owen with Unleash the Knowledge, Rithik with Books for Wealth. Those are the three that kind of I stumbled upon at first. And so it was like, hey, I've read those 4 books that they're posting about. What about these other ones? Maybe I should check those out. And so it kind of propelled my reading habit, which was cool. And then I'm talking to who's my business partner now outside of this page. We have a separate business. And he was like, well, why don't you start one of your own? His name's Matt. And I said, well, Matt, I don't really, like I told you, I don't have any design experience. I don't really post anything. And to be honest, that's a little out of my comfort zone. But having said that, I was always bombarding him and a couple of my buddies with the things that I'd learned in books, because I knew that they weren't as interested in reading those things. And so I was like, hey, check this book out. Rich Dad Poor Dad can help you, become
Yeah.
financially literate, or this Atomic Habits can help you, end bad habits and proceed with good habits.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think he was tired of me telling him all the time. And it
Yeah.
was like, go find an outlet of your own. So, anyways, he told me to launch one, and I had read a couple of books on branding. And so it was
Mm.
like, maybe this would be a good opportunity to practice some of those strategies and come up with something. So, yeah, I
So
remember.
what were the books on branding that like really that
Um,
inspired you?
uh, what was it? Story building, or oh
Mm.
my gosh, hold on,
The
it's
the
Donald
one
Miller.
Donald How to
Yes,
Build a Story. Yeah.
building a story brand. Yes, well,
Yeah.
it really resonated with me, as you can tell. No,
Yeah.
but really, just all these. I can't even name a few that are off the top of my head right now, but books that are just talking about how to differentiate yourself, marketing, and I
Yeah.
really had no outlet from what I do for a living. And so this allowed me to kind of build something from the ground up, which was fun.
Mm.
Fun and challenging, because there's nobody telling you like, hey, that sucks, or hey, this is good. Like, you
Yeah,
have
it's
to
hard
kind
to
of,
get the
yeah,
feedback of like, am I doing this right?
is this
Is
good?
this it?
Yeah,
Is this good? Do you like this? Yeah,
yeah,
it's the same thing. Yes,
yeah.
there's no boss over you. Now you mentioned like, was there a book that like gave you this epiphany of like, oh, I gotta do this, or was it just like a series of events and you were just like, let's try this?
Well, I will say that, one of my intentions with it was to eventually have some sort of not passive income, but another revenue stream if I could get it to where it was large enough that I could profit from it. That was definitely an interest. It wasn't the purpose, but it was definitely an
Yeah.
interest early
So a
on.
side hustle, like
Yeah, and that
that's
book
cool.
was, the 4 Hour Work Week behind me, and
Yeah.
also Think and Grow Rich, right? Just because it allows you to dream up other types of revenue streams besides your 9 to 5 or besides a conventional side
It
hustle.
it's fascinating. You mentioned Think and Grow Rich, and Think and
Yeah.
Grow Rich is such a it's an older book, but it's
Uh-huh.
still very applicable to the times of today.
Yeah.
I love the idea of him, having his little group and talking to them and
Mastermind.
doing that. Yeah, the
Yeah.
masterminds. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow,
It's
that's
cool.
so
And when
ahead
you
of
think
the
about it,
time.
yeah. Well,
You
and I
know,
think a lot of us have that, whether it's, your buddies or that your
yeah,
mentor or someone at work, and you're bouncing all these ideas, but you're never.
yeah,
He makes it sound like you got to get them all in a room, right?
yeah.
And see, but really, you're just collectively kind of bouncing ideas off one another and seeing what sticks.
Now,
So,
do you do that? Do you go into your imagination and try and do a mastermind with that, or do you prefer to have like regular people?
I typically it's a couple select people that I'll bounce ideas off of, and what's
Yeah,
great is like my wife does a great job of telling me like, that doesn't, I don't know about that. But what's been funny is she's not always right. Don't
yeah.
tell her I said that. But you know, it's it's like I'm gonna try this, and she's like, yeah, I don't know about that. And then I put it out there,
Yeah,
and then next thing you know, that's the one that takes off. That's the post. It's a
yeah.
little bit edgy, and boom, it goes. Or
Well, you
you know,
never know. I like you'll see that with a lot of YouTubers that they'll talk about it. Like they'll just keep putting out. It's really the consistency
it
that
really is.
leads to the thing. To me, the hardest thing is having enough content to just keep going
Yeah,
over and over,
yeah,
so you can get past that hurdle.
yeah, yeah. And I
It's
think Austin Kleon's book "Steal Like an Artist" is great too, because
oh
I
so
mean,
good.
we're not inventing the wheel. We are posting about books and pointing out what stuck out to us, but who could do it in the most relatable way, or one that'll resonate, or just who can be the best reference, right? Or we can all add to it together. Not necessarily the best, but the better you are at it, I think is where you tend to grow, because it's a pretty heavily populated space now on Instagram, the bookstagram space, which is
Yeah.
a great thing. It's a great thing in
It
my
it
opinion.
it, it is no it and it's yeah, like now you can find all these different books, but it's great because like you said, it was hard, like okay, what's the next book, what's this, and it's like now you got this, and it's like 20
Yeah.
books to read before 2022, read
Yeah,
this, read that, and
that's
sometimes
right.
they're different, and sometimes they
Yeah.
usually have the same ones. It's like usually Atomic Habits. I'm like,
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
great book. To
Right.
be
What else is out there?
10% better each day
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
is the best way to. You mentioned the Austin Kleon. One of the ones that I really like, the one Show Your Work, where he
Yeah.
talks about if you do like a blog or something, just put it out there,
Right.
just see where it's
Right.
going. That's kind of what you did with your
Right.
Instagram. It's just like, here it is.
Yeah. It's
I
true.
don't know where it's going. I know what I'd like to do with it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think it also deals with, passion, and you're talking about, books. And
Mhm. Mhm.
I find books for me with this podcast an enlightening experience, a way
Yeah.
to get different ideas,
Yeah.
as they say, take from source,
That's right. That's right.
as
Yeah.
Napoleon
Expand your
Hill would
mind.
talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
It's
it's
very
great.
hard to, I mean, to find that,
Yeah.
so just reading different books, and I'm kind of similar to you. During the pandemic, I it's kind of like, what do I do with myself? And then it was kind of
True.
like I took this class by Lauren Trulin, and she introduced me to all these different books, like Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza, and I was like, oh, okay, I
Mm.
actually do have more control over circumstances, as opposed to just where most people are victim of happenstance, and they're just like, oh well,
Absolutely.
life is
Yeah.
going to just have. It's like, no, if you put things in a certain way, you
Yeah.
can you can go in that trajectory. The opposite can happen too. You can put
Yeah,
yourself in the wrong way, and you can just continue create your own downward spiral.
you
You
can.
know,
And
it's
so much of it happens between your ears, right? And so
yeah,
I think the more not really weapons, but tools, I guess, in your mind
yeah,
that you have as far as taking what's happening, putting it into perspective, and then that gives you the action that you need to take, right? But you
man,
have to, because anybody can read these books, right?
yeah,
Well, as long as you're literate, you can read these books and you can understand these principles. But what separates certain people is taking that and then applying it to your life, which is not easy in a lot of ways, especially when
yeah.
it's something that tells you to live completely differently or think completely differently than you did prior. It's like, man, that makes sense. But do you put the book down and then go on about your life, or do you really make a concerted effort to change, which is tough?
Yeah, the book right before Stillness is the key. Ego is the enemy. I
Oh my
found
gosh. Whew.
that to be a really good book,
Yeah.
but there were a lot of things where I was kind of like, I don't know if I can necessarily agree with all of this.
Yeah.
He kind of
Yeah.
goes back into this idea of, once again, that, you don't really have control over your life. And the more I look at things, I'm like, no, you actually really do kind of have control
Yeah.
over your life. You just have to, put yourself in a position to do it. Now,
Yeah.
can you say, okay, this would happen here and this will happen here exactly like this? It's like, no, it doesn't really
Hmm.
work like that.
Yeah.
And I'm reading Infinite Possibilities, and he's talking about, like, if
Nice.
you could do that, wouldn't that like get old after a while? Okay,
Yeah.
today I'm going to win the lottery. Oh
Right.
man, I'm getting kind of sick of winning the lottery.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like it would, you would get kind of bored with yourself. The one
Right.
that I really like, that and I'm reading right now, is Stillness is the Key by
You
Ryan
know,
Holiday.
that's the one that I took the longest to get to. I read Obstacle and then Ego, and then
Yeah, same
I
here.
finally got around with Stillness. But yeah, probably enjoyed that more than the others. And it's
Yeah,
so counter to the way I live my life. Honestly, meditation's never been something that I
yeah,
could easily do. But the points he makes, it really was the one that was like, oh man, wow, okay, okay, just being at peace, good or bad,
yeah.
just be at
Well,
peace.
I like that there's one part where they say, just go into a room and let your mind wander and pay attention to what your mind does. And I'm like, that's so different from like most of the way they
Yeah.
teach you, like, no, keep the thoughts clear. It's like, no,
Yeah.
sometimes just kind of like let that, go. Yeah, meditation is very hard because of where we are today. But I feel like meditation and reading are really the only things we have to co-op,
Yeah.
the digital age, which is like 5-second attention
I
span.
think you're right. And what's funny about meditation, I think what I struggled with, and maybe other people struggle with, is when I'm reading, I feel productive. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm being still, but I'm moving towards something. I'm learning something. I'm separating myself from someone who isn't reading. I feel like, the top
It feels like
CEOs read, right?
you're doing
Yeah.
something. It's not like, you're watching a YouTube video and you're just like, this is funny. It's some
Right.
SNL skit, like,
Yeah.
you don't really feel like you're doing anything. You kind of are like,
Yeah.
well, that was 4 hours. I
Right.
did
Right.
nothing.
Yeah. And
When
then you
you
go to bed.
read,
Yeah.
you feel like you've accomplished something. And
Right.
there's something about a lot of these books that you're talking about, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean, I don't
Oh
think
yeah.
anybody really puts into perspective, the assets and liabilities better than him,
Right. Right.
because a lot of people just don't realize that. They're just like, oh, I got a lot of money, and then we go buy a car. It's like, okay, yeah, but the car is going to lose like half of its value as soon as you
Right.
drive it off a lot. It's like, it's not a good, it's not a great investment unless you
Right.
have assets that can pay for that. Then there you go.
Yeah.
Now you're talking.
Yeah. And
Now go buy crap.
all of a sudden, with the supply chain, cars have become an asset for like the short time.
They really,
but what do
yeah,
you,
now they
but what are you
have,
gonna
yeah.
do? Yeah.
It's
Yeah. But and
like,
apps like Turo and flipping things on its head like that. But yeah, I think. But with meditation, it feels like, you know, you're not necessarily, you can't win at it, right?
no,
It's
no,
not a
there's
game. It's so for task oriented people, I think that it's kind of a struggle as far as the goal here is to do nothing and to free your mind and to kind of be at peace and let some of these thoughts that are constantly running that you're not even aware of, become more aware of them, and then gain control.
Have you ever looked at the Mind Valley stuff?
No.
I mean, they're I'm sure you've seen their advertisements somewhere on Instagram.
Is it like calm, or is it
It's
like
kind of,
a
it's
guided
not like
meditation?
calm. It's more like they're more of a group that's all about, really progressive thinking. Really interesting. He wrote a really interesting book. There it is. The Code of the Extraordinary Mind. If you ever want to read a book that, is kind of, he's teaching you to think more long term in some ways. And he's had on Robin Sharma, and he's brought on different thinkers and done these courses with them. It's kind of like a course, a place where you can take different courses and learn things. Like Jim Quick works with them and stuff. And he has a 6 phase meditation that I find fascinating, and it's one of the best ones because you can do it anywhere. It doesn't take a lot of time. Whereas a Joe Dispenza meditation is like, you gotta give yourself an hour and just kind of fall back and just kind of fall into it. And I still struggle with, it's like you said, task-oriented people are like, okay, did I do it? I mean, really the only task is like making it through the 60 minutes. And, sometimes it's so relaxing because you're like listening to it that you fall asleep, and it's like, well, do I count that? Is that right? Was that productive? And they say, don't lay down, but it's like, sometimes I find myself just, laying down anyway, it's like, but it's, you really have to just kind of give into it and realize that there's not really, kind of let go of the idea of goal and self, and just let go of the idea of time, which is really hard. It's really hard to let go of the idea of time.
It is, because we're productivity is so drilled into us, and we're so aware of, our finite time on this earth. And so it's like, it is, I think, hard, like you said, just to kind of view that as a good use of time and a necessary use of time, which it totally is when you really reason it. But in that moment, it's like, could I be doing something more productive? And the answer is yes, probably. But the whole purpose.
And then once you start thinking that, it takes you out of the alignment. So it's such an interesting game where you have to just kind of throw yourself in and be like, I don't know what's going to happen, and do that.
Right. And
which is interesting. A lot of manifestation deals with that. So in some ways it's training you to understand manifestation by just like, I don't know where this is going. I know where it's going to come at the end, but I just have to just kind of surrender to it. Yeah. And I find that it's the hardest thing for meditators, because it's just, especially with a task-oriented guys like us, we've got to, it's like, I want to be, doing something in a whole hour. Mm-hmm. Oh no, that was 20 minutes. Much longer.
It felt like 4, right?
Yeah, it feels like 4. You're like, was that? God, that felt like 60 minutes. Like, oh, that was 5 minutes. It's weird.
Going back to Ryan Holiday too, I think a lot of the way that he's kind of paved his, stance, I guess, with stoicism and applying it to today, some of the things he does, I don't think anybody can read one of his books and agree with everything totally. I think that's part of his niche, is he's going to say stuff that'll ruffle your feathers a little bit. But what I enjoyed about Ego is the Enemy, honestly, it was a terrible read in the sense that it made me confront my ego. The whole time I was like, dang, that stings, which is good. It's good to challenge ourselves. But I enjoyed how he separated it into 3 parts, and that he talked about your ego with failure and your ego with success, and understanding, the duplicity there as far as how you handle both, right? But I do agree with you in the sense that, if we don't have an ego, then we may not get a lot done. Like, that's a necessary part of life, but you need to be aware of it. The self-awareness, emotional intelligence part of it is so important. But if you suppress your ego forever, you're not going to get anywhere. There's not going to be any drive.
Make your bed really taught me a lot about that, because he talks about how they would make the bed. There it is. Yeah. Where you would make the bed, and it was like, it's a task where there's no real perfect way to do it. They can do
Right.
it perfect and they'll just like throw it up and go, go give me
Yeah.
40, you're going to go
Yeah.
do drills today, go
Yeah.
run around in sand or whatever. But the idea they're teaching them is you're doing it every day, whether you're getting a reward or not.
Right.
You're doing the work. You're taking that step.
Yeah.
You have on here the Will Smith book. I haven't read it yet, but I
Yeah.
love the quote that he talks about in interviews. He says, "How do I do it? You take a brick and you
Yes.
place that brick as carefully as you can, and like that's what I do, one brick
Focus
after
on that
another." And
brick.
I think that's the danger of where we live right now, because you can see all the accomplishments and you don't see the brick after brick after brick. And it's like that's how you need to go about it, is just
Yeah.
one step at a
One
time.
step.
You can't do a million things. That's why multitasking is probably the
Yeah.
worst thing that's ever happened, because we're all like, oh, I'm doing a million things, but you're not really doing anything fully.
Right.
You're
Right.
doing
Yeah.
you do this completely. One thing I wanted to
Completely.
ask you is how
Yeah.
long do you like to read for in a sitting?
It varies. Almost every single day, I'll read first thing in the morning, and I try to, Atomic Habits, I try to stack it. So typically during the week, I'll go to the gym and I like bringing a book with me in the car. I'm not
Mm.
advocating reading and driving. Don't do that. No, but when I get there, I'll sit down and I'll read it. I track it with an app, and it just allows me to visualize progress through a book. I love it because it tells me this much percentage left in the book or this much you've completed. But it also allows me to keep track of quotes and insights, which then make it easier to make posts for Instagram, because I don't have to just
Mm.
dig through the book again. I can just, okay, that key point was on page 38. Let me go review it. That's right. That's what it was. And then put it in my own words. But so I'll read anywhere from, typically 15 minutes first thing in the morning. And then throughout the day when I have time, I'll
Mm.
read as much as I can, and then usually right before bed. But I'm not a big proponent of just sitting down and reading for an hour and a half, because
Mm.
I don't know about you, but for me, I don't really remember most of the end of it, right? So my attention span only lasts so long, and then I don't feel like it
Yeah.
really soaks in. So what about you?
Yeah. It depends. Yeah, like you said, it varies. Sometimes it'll, be an hour. Sometimes it'll be that. Like I'm reading the Steve Jobs. I'm finally going to that autobiography by Walter
Yeah,
Isaacson, and it's
I got
daunting,
it
but
right
it's
here.
like, wow,
Right here.
you do?
Yeah, yeah. Steve Jobs,
He's such a
huge.
fascinating
He is.
character,
What
and
a
how he came,
specimen.
from being, abandoned to being
Yeah,
chosen, to his
yeah.
whole family basically like scrapping together to just give him whatever he wanted. So like he was,
Yeah,
in some ways, he became a spoiled child,
it's
and
so
he talks
weird.
about, how he would read Plato and stuff. And he said his favorites were King Lear and Moby Dick. And
Yeah,
the interviewer says, he stopped right there, but it's I'm only a little bit into it, but like I'm so
yeah,
excited to read it. It's just such a, I don't know. I
yeah,
find him to be such a fascinating character. I mean, because he really shaped. He's one of those characters like Elon Musk who's really
yeah.
shaped
Our
where
world.
we are today.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. Right now I have AirPods in. I'm on a MacBook, right? I got my
yeah,
iPhone
same
right
here.
there. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid.
iPhone,
Yeah, but it
it's like,
but there's a reason. Yeah, superior product in my opinion, and the way that he
yeah,
built the culture around it and a movement, and a lot of that came from when he came back, which is so cool, because
yeah.
had it ended with him just going to Pixar and that's it, it's a wrap, right? Like we don't
Yeah.
have these innovations, but
I'm
yeah,
thinking about that.
brilliant.
Yeah, he was part of Pixar.
Yeah,
He like that
shaped our childhood.
revolutionaries.
Yeah,
It's Disney. I mean, they were
yeah,
for a long time like in a rut after the Disney Renaissance. They didn't know what to do, and then came Toy Story, and it was like it opened them up again to
yeah.
this new way of telling story. And yeah, he was right there with it.
Just
The
wild. And
iPod. I mean, think
yeah,
of how
the
cool. I
iPod.
mean, the how cool they made that. It was like everyone was like, "Oh, I got to get that. I can."
Well, and unapologetically shaking up and disrupting an entire, industry that was built to absolutely and for good reason support the artists that were creating this, but he totally switched how they got paid. Like,
Yeah, I know
like all of a
he's
sudden
done so many
yeah,
different things, and it's so I'm reading that. I'm reading
yeah,
Infinite Possibilities,
nice.
and I'm reading and then Stillness is the Key, because it's just
Yeah, that's great, man. It's a good
such a
mixture.
fascinating book. Yeah, I like to,
Yeah, mix it
I
up.
I just had finished the 48 Laws of Power, which is
Wow.
another daunting book. I had to basically just be like, okay, every day I'm gonna read a different law
One.
or whatever,
Nice.
like one
I
law,
have not. Yeah, I have not.
it,
It's so
it's a
much to bite
hard
off.
one.
Yeah, yeah,
And then I started reading The Art of Seduction. I kind of got, a little, sidetracked
yeah,
on it. I was just like, okay,
yeah, yeah.
kind of,
Yeah, I've heard
weirdo.
human nature and power are the ones, but
Yeah, I love to see
yeah,
human name, but that's another one where it's like, okay, so
yeah,
I'm gonna be like one each day. It's like I
yeah,
can't imagine, like, is there somebody out there that's just like sitting there reading all the 48 laws of power and be like,
yeah.
and done.
See,
You
and
know,
Robert Greene too
it's
is
like,
an interesting, yeah, because Robert
yeah,
Greene did a lot of his work
especially of
post stroke, right? I think
yeah,
he had
yeah,
a
he did.
cerebrovascular accident, and then that has just opened up, that totally changed how he lives and how he sees things, which then gave him a new
It's
perspective.
interesting you mentioned that. Joe
Yeah,
Dispenza, the guy who,
yeah,
in some way, one of the meditating gurus I see him as,
uh-huh.
neuroscience. I mean, he through that, through, like almost through a car wreck, he was able to rehabilitate his system by just thought. He understood that, if thoughts
Wow,
can make us sick, then thoughts can make us better. And I was like,
yeah,
that's a powerful,
it's
thing people can look to, because it's like people just, we have something bad happens, and it's like, no, you have, find
right.
the the good in this
Yeah,
situation.
what are you blessed by, and the gratitude for it. But
Yeah,
what's so funny is, like, if you were going through something, it's so easy for me to tell you what you should do, right?
I
And
know.
if you would just meditate, and if you would just control what you're thinking and flip it on. But then when it what happens to us, it's like, I know exactly how I should reframe this, and I know exactly how I could spin this into a positive, but I'm unwilling to do that right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. They're just like, oh God, I
Like,
hate everyone. Get
and then
away from me.
get
I
away, and
hate
then
Instagram. I hate everything.
yeah,
Like,
too much
yeah,
positivity. I want to be mad, but then you have an epiphany, and it's like, if everybody just knew, you can
yeah,
control your subconscious mind. Yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah. It's
it's
like, oh
funny,
yeah,
and
thanks, man.
yeah,
Thank you.
and then 2 weeks later, life's good, and then something bad happens again, and here we are again. But that's the cycle, man.
Yeah.
That's life. That's what makes it
Now, do you
worthwhile.
like to read through? Because you mentioned an app. Do you use Kindle?
I don't. I can't. I look at my phone enough. I have to
Yeah.
get. I love. I love books. I would much rather a hardcover than a soft cover.
See,
I
the thing
love.
I like about the Kindle is it kind of feels like a book, because
Okay,
with the Kindle, and it feels like I'm giving a plug to them. I should like call
it's
them up
okay.
and be
Kindle,
like,
please
I've
support.
been like
Yeah,
doing all this pro Kindle stuff. Like,
please sponsor.
what do you think, Amazon?
Yeah,
I'm giving you all this stuff, but like it feels like a book. And plus, you can't really do anything else with it. You
true.
can't really surf, you can't go on Instagram and all these other things. So when you pick it up, it almost is giving you that signal. It's like, okay, it's time to read, which is the
Yeah.
same thing that happens with a book. So I like that. Plus it tracks, pages, and you can highlight things and stuff. What
Hmm.
what what app are you using? I'm curious.
It's an app. So there we go again. We should be sponsored by all of these things,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
no, it's an app from a small developer out of Brazil called Leo. So
Oh, yeah.
Leio, and it's easy because you can track one book for free, or you pay a one-time fee for tracking multiple books. But it gives you a ton of statistics. So at the end of the year, like, if you after
Yeah.
this after we record this, if you go back to my page and kind of scroll back to the end of the year, it gives you a nice little chart that you can show, and you can see exactly when my baby was born. There's
Wow.
just this massive dip in, like, reading, but um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
People
hard.
don't
It
realize that. Yeah. It's like
turns out with sleep deprivation, it's hard
people
to.
all think they're like, oh yeah, the child, it'll be easy.
Yeah.
Like, no,
Oh
it'll
my
wake up
gosh.
at any time.
Yeah.
and you got to do it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why
And that's
somebody
it.
told me a long time ago, they said, if you have a child, make sure that like you don't, if you get the child used to sleeping in a noise-free atmosphere, that's it. But if you
That's
can
it.
get the child to sleep in a noise atmosphere, it'll get used to that and you
Life's
won't have to
good.
worry about that. It's like very
Yeah.
easy, easier said than done. But I was like, I always
Right.
thought about that. It's just like,
What I've
yeah,
noticed that's been so interesting is how routine based we are. And it could be genetics. My wife and I were very routine people, but
yeah,
just as soon as we get, bath times at this time, bedtimes at this time, she'll sleep through the night, and she has for some time now. But as soon as, say we have a holiday or something where we're going to skip the bath time so we can hang out a little bit longer with everybody or something. I mean, or daylight saving, it just
yeah.
throws everything off. And it's like, I'm struggling, she's struggling. It's like,
Yeah.
but even from such a young age, it's interesting, you know?
It's interesting. You mentioned, routine. I think we all in some ways have a routine, even if you're doing nothing, you're still
Yeah.
getting into like a routine of
Yeah.
of doing nothing. Saying,
Of
well,
lethargy.
I
Yeah.
sit up here,
Yeah.
I play video games and watch
Yeah.
TV, and then I, go to
Yeah.
bed. It's like, but it's still a routine in some form.
Yeah.
It may not be a
Absolutely.
great routine to,
Yeah.
to promote productivity, but if,
Right.
you wanted a routine to promote not really doing anything, then yeah,
Yeah.
you've got
Yeah.
you've got a routine.
Yeah. I agree. Unless you do something different every day, like there's no way.
Yeah.
We all have routines. We all have routines.
Now, how did you get into reading? Was there like something that like, were you always a
Sparked it.
reader or?
I really wasn't. Growing up, I really despised reading. I was a very active child. I did what I had to do. I excelled in school. I did well, but beyond required reading, I really did not do much. And if I did, it was fiction. Now, the thing that I don't think that they required us to read any nonfiction, and I think that that was a big part of this. Is
Yeah.
it was, I enjoyed reading Ender's Game in ninth grade, but I didn't enjoy reading a separate piece. And some people would love that book. It really bored me, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, see, I think that's part of the problem. School,
yeah,
introduces reading as a way of, you must read this book, you must read this
right,
book. And I
yeah,
understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to, get you, more understand
culture,
things and
yeah,
yeah, cultured. Yeah, a
yeah,
worldview of things. But I think that opposite happens is just like, well, I don't want to do anything. And
yeah,
now I don't want to
yeah,
read at all. And it's like you've
right, yeah,
destroyed this process. And like you said, the same with me. I really discovered reading through nonfiction, but I was like, oh
right,
wow, I can make myself better through
yeah,
books.
which is amazing. Yeah,
And I think that's the thing. I think for us, books really developed. It was like, okay, I can learn new
yeah,
things through books, new ideas
right,
that I wouldn't have thought that wouldn't I wouldn't have thought of unless you were
right,
hanging around with somebody that believed like Napoleon Hill, which so
right,
few
yeah, or
people is like
just quoted him.
entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's another thing is you don't know what you're interested in, and so nobody can be like, hey, you should read Think and Grow Rich when you're
Yeah.
18. But had I, maybe that shifts what I do with my life. Maybe I don't go to college. Maybe I do something else. And but yeah, I
Yeah.
think that once I graduated college and was working full time, I just got a little bit stagnant, and was like, I enjoy hanging out with my friends. I enjoy having a good time, but I don't feel I for the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm progressing towards anything, and I don't really know what to do about it. And so found podcasts weren't as popular then. This was years ago,
Yeah.
and I think that would have been a great outlet. And young people now have that, and that's amazing because they can listen to that whenever. But
Yeah.
yeah, as you mentioned, Rich Dad Poor Dad was that. So I guess I read technically my first nonfiction was How to Win Friends and Influence People,
Mm.
um, and then actually a couple of books by Andy Andrews. Are you familiar with him at all?
What books did you write?
The
Name some of the
Noticer,
title.
The Noticer, which is probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
along the lines of The Alchemist, like a fable. It's an easy
Oh,
read.
like I love, yeah, I
Yeah,
love.
like
I
fictional
think
story
those
with
should
good
be
stuff.
more pushed in school in some ways, because it's teaching you. I mean, The
Yeah.
Alchemist really teaches you how to look at manifestation in a
Right.
way, but throughout a story.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of like that. I needed the books, kind of like I was kind of in a rut, and the books gave me, a new outlook on things. I felt like I
Right.
was just like, I'm going in circles. I'm like, and I learned through books. It was like, get your mind right. Once you get
Yeah.
your mind right, things will come into place. I
Right.
always
Yeah.
say you need to be happy now, as opposed to doing what a lot of people
Searching.
do. It's just, I'm going to chase this sunset and then I'll be happy. Once I have
Yeah.
this, like, no, you're not happy now. You're not going to be happy later. You got to fix that first, which means it always deals with you. Fix you
Yeah.
first, and then other things will come. And I really needed to learn that. And the only
Yeah.
way that was really going to come through was like meditation and books. And those are the things that like really got it in, maybe just kind of confront things and be like, okay, I got to
Yeah.
take responsibility for where I am right now, and just
Do it.
go,
Yeah.
go, do something, do it different, and and look at things differently.
Yeah.
As I had a
Which
lot of,
is,
I would just hang with friends and we would just complain all the time. And it's like,
yeah.
it's not good. You're just gonna create a cycle of just
Yeah.
complaining. It's like, hey, congratulations. We've all complained and done nothing.
Yep. Victim mentality, right? It's like
Exactly.
what can you do? What can we do to move forward? But yeah, so then I think Rich Dad Poor Dad was what actually sparked a reading habit, because
Mm,
it was so it was so clear cut as far as like, oh my gosh, this my mind has never been opened by a book like this. It's like, and he's really not saying anything profound, right? He's just saying like, well, maybe there's more to life than what you were taught in school, and maybe being an employee forever isn't the way to wealth, or whatever it
yeah.
may be that you want, assets, liabilities, right? Very, very cut and dry stuff. It's the manner in which he told it, and you're walking along with him, and it's like, whoa, that reminds me of my parents, or that reminds me of
Yeah.
what I
I
learned
I
in
th I
school.
think that's something that, really the employee mindset is very similar to the victim mindset of,
Yeah,
it's like, how much you're gonna pay me? And, the rich dad was like, no, no, I'm not gonna pay you anything. I want you to
yeah,
think like an employer
right,
and do that. And I think a lot of people have that, it's like, I'll ask people, what do you want to do? Or are you happy? And they'll just be like dumbfounded. And it's just
well,
like,
yeah,
they have no idea. They have no idea how to answer that question. And it's like,
yeah.
well,
Which is,
are you
you know,
happy?
and everybody has different paths, and there was moments where I was very happy as only an employee, right? Or
Yeah.
I just somebody paid me and we traded time for money, and that was okay, and that was comfortable, and it provided me security in that moment. But it never did feel like this is it. Like, okay, I graduated, I'm working, this is it. No, that this feels like a stepping stone. I now have security, I can pay off debt. Now I've freed myself up, and I want freedom of time. And what will allow me to have that? And
Yeah.
then enter Think and Grow Rich, and then all of a sudden you get creative, and it's like, what if I could make this sounds crazy, right? What if I could just make an Instagram page where I earn a nice side income for just reading books and then sharing what I learned about it? And it's like, yeah,
Exactly.
sure, do that. Well, you
Mm.
can. You can do all
You
kinds.
can.
You can do all kinds of
Yeah.
things. So it's just
And it's
cool.
great that you were able to, that you were able to just go and do that, because sometimes, the worst thing you do is you can pitch the idea to people and they can almost put it into your head that like, oh, don't do that. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
just do it and see what happens. Don't
Yeah.
don't even
Yeah.
tell anybody. Like, what I saw an Instagram post to say, be successful in silence, as
Right.
opposed to always showing. It's like, oh, look at this, look at what I've
Yeah.
done here, look at all these things.
Yeah.
If you can do that, if you can do that, it'll
It's
be
hard.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if you do fail, it's not quite as broadcasted,
Yeah.
you know, because if you're always touting yourself, then at this moment you fail, there are people there ready to cheer for that too. But
Yeah.
I think um, I think what's also notable is just when the Industrial Revolution kind of shaped the 9 to 5, and everyone bought in. It's like you have to do that, and then the fear from that is what drove our parents' parents and then our
Yeah.
parents to, well, you need to go to school. So now we have
Yeah.
built up this
College.
university.
That's
Yeah.
the
And
new thing. And it's this
and then
golden carrot. And it's like,
yeah,
but it's
but we're not going to
not.
help you get a job. Yeah, yeah,
Steve Jobs has talked about it. Elon Musk has talked about it.
yeah,
It's not developing employers. It's developing employees.
yeah,
It's a system to make people, think the same way. The same way I feel there's a problem with the schooling system is it's
yeah.
not allowing for learning at
No,
a different level. You're
right.
learning in a very linear way as opposed
Yeah.
to what
Don't work
could
in
I
groups.
create?
Yeah,
It's what can
yeah.
I do? How do I solve this one thing through
Right.
these narrow ideas of
There's
that they've
one
given me?
answer. Yeah,
Yeah, there's
exactly.
one
Yeah,
answer. Like,
yeah,
how applicable is that to life? There's never
yeah.
just one answer. And the
No.
only thing that really is one answer is math. And even then, that's debatable.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But yeah,
what advice would you give to others about like people that want to start reading but
yeah,
haven't started?
yeah. Definitely. This is a question that comes up a lot, and I
Yes.
always go back to my own experiences because that's what's helped me. Um, I think you need to know first what you're interested in. And if you don't, then you need to pick up a book and it'll tell you pretty quickly if you're interested in it or not. If you're
Yeah.
not interested in it, put that book down. Go to the next one that
Yeah.
someone might recommend. Or
Don't start with 48 laws of power.
yeah, that's the beauty. That's a good point. That's the beauty
Yeah.
of Instagram and Google now is you can find your next read. But it's imperative that you start with something that you're interested in or that fuels some sort of passion inside of you, because if you go to the gym and you never see results, then you're not going to continue to exercise, right? So if you want to develop a habit for reading, you have to enjoy it a little bit, or else
And that's
it's
why I
not going to
think like
stick.
starting with shorter books sometimes
Yeah,
can help
that's
is it
true.
can jumpstart you to be like, okay, this isn't so bad. I
Yeah,
can do this and then move on to like don't start with, Steve
yeah,
Jobs's giant book where it's like,
yeah,
okay, we're gonna go through, birth to death,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it can
I
be
also,
daunting because like sometimes accomplishing that first book would be like, okay, I can keep doing. Sometimes the idea of just the check off thing, like not check off the writer, but checking off something
yeah,
each day works.
yeah,
The
yeah,
slowly progressing. Jerry Seinfeld talks about how he'll write a joke every day, and
yeah.
it's like you try to do that to build the
Just do
pattern. A
that.
lot of apps use that.
Yeah,
Duolingo, tracks your thing, and it's like sometimes you can use that. You don't
right.
It's good to get started with that. You don't want to get like sucked into that because
Right.
then it kind of becomes a means goal where you're just like
Yeah,
going, it's like, oh
yeah,
god, I gotta get this many books read, and it's like, yeah, but
right.
are you actually enjoying the books? Do you speed read?
I don't speed read. I'm a really slow reader, to be honest. I
I
did
know
read
that.
Limitless, and I tried some
Yeah.
of the tactics, but I just felt like I was gamifying it too much to where I didn't
Yeah.
retain anything. I don't know, but that was for me.
That's somebody I'd
But
like to have on to talk to him about that. And like, because I'm seeing that a lot. People are
yeah,
like, okay, this is a great idea, but it's not, why isn't it settling in the long term?
right.
Yeah, he gives us that little thing, but it's like I don't know. There seems to be something because what I like about speed reading is it causes you to think faster. So if you're looking at like a phrase instead of like each word,
Hmm.
you have to one, you can't get lost and start thinking about something else and be like,
Yeah,
what
that's
am I
true.
doing again tomorrow?
You're
Oh
like
yeah, I gotta
into
see
it.
so and so. Yeah, you read it,
Yeah,
like
that's
there's
true.
no way to like be doing, but I think applying it is
Yeah,
is where it's getting lost. And I think also
right.
the word speed reading sounds it
Yeah,
sounds like foolish. It sounds
like
like,
a gimmick.
oh,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
done. It sounds like,
Done.
you're not gonna do anything. So
Yeah,
I think we need like a better word for that.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But no, I
yeah,
never did. I never really sat with me. But yeah,
yeah,
I think what you mentioned earlier though is probably the most important key to developing any habit is you have to track it. You have to track it. So that's what those apps are doing too, is they're allowing you to track
yeah,
it. But just knowing your progress and not setting lofty goals, just 10 minutes, 10 pages is a
Yeah.
great place to start. That's where I did. Very, like you said, task oriented. It's like, okay, I did that. And then you have the ability to keep going and leaving that open, not,
Yeah.
okay, book is shut. I did what I needed
And
to
you
do today.
and you get that reward feeling of after like checking it
Yeah.
off.
The
I know
endorphins.
some people are completely against that. Yeah, the endorphins, but it's like,
Yeah.
if that's going to progress you to the next day, I
Yeah.
mean, you know, after a while, yeah, you don't want to just be doing it for the reward, but if that gets you
Yeah.
started,
Yeah.
go right ahead and do it, you know, because it's
Right.
like, you know, writing it down, checking it off. Sometimes that's the best thing. I'm still, you know, I'm still kind of frustrated that we don't really have an app where I can like just check it off. Like there's a lot of like, you know, you can press the button, right? But there's something about drawing a line through it or checking it off that's very visceral feeling of like,
Yeah.
yes, I
Yeah.
did it, you know,
That's true. That's true.
you know, and
What I like about that app that I use is that I pull it out and you can scan the barcode so it loads the book, and then you just click start, and
yeah,
then you're timing yourself, and so you can kind of keep up with your pace and see. I don't know. It
that's
works for
cool.
me. If I don't do that, like you're saying, some people are purists. I'm not. I'm
Yeah,
reading with an objective.
yeah,
Counting.
exactly.
For the last 4 years I've counted how many books I've read, and I know exactly how many pages. It's a game. It's a little bit,
Yeah.
and it helps push me forward.
Well, that's what I
Mm,
did in 2019. I set the goal of
yeah.
like, okay, I'm gonna read, you know,
How
50
many?
books. And I
Oh
was I
wow.
was like
That is
52. I was like, I'm gonna do this
nice.
thing. I mean, not
Yeah.
all of them were the longest books, but it
Yeah.
was like I accomplished,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I went out and, you know, accomplished it. Made me, you know, it was like I mean, toward the end of the year is like, okay, don't bother me. I'm reading.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
meet the means
I've got to
goal.
finish 8 more
Yeah.
books in December to meet this, but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna
it was
do it.
like
I'm gonna
full,
do
yeah.
it.
It was more like
Yeah.
20 books.
It's like Christmas dinner or whatever, and you're just not. It's like, I'll be there. Save me a
I'm
plate.
reading the instruction manual to this video
Yeah.
game.
It's a book.
Yeah, the book.
Yeah. I feel you on
Um,
that.
do you have a beginning of the day routine?
I do a little bit. It varies depending on. So I have a couple different jobs and side hustle, and also so my
Yeah.
days aren't the same every day, But on the days that are the same, I wake up and I'll drive to the gym and I'll read
Yeah.
and then I'll work out, and that's pretty much my thing. And
Yeah.
I'll usually listen to, the Daily Stoic or School of Greatness or Mindset Mentor, something along the lines of getting better. Last week I listened to a couple of your episodes with
Oh, well, thank you.
Emiliano and who else I listened to? Steven with
On?
Atomic
Yeah,
Readers.
yeah,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
he's
yeah, yeah,
great.
yeah.
Fantastic guy. Are you part of the 5 a.m. club?
I did it. I did that.
You
Okay,
did?
so I launched the page in June of 2020, and I started reading that June 6th. And so
Yeah.
I started doing the 5 a.m. club. And honestly, I was waking up at 6, so it
Yeah.
really wasn't that hard. But
Yeah.
then we would go on vacation, and so I'd be on the beach, and everyone else was sleeping until 9, and I was
Mhm.
up, and I had ran down the beach and back, and I had read, and I had meditated, and
Oh,
it was
wow.
amazing because I was like done with my day. They're waking up, but I will say by like probably 6 months into it is when it kind of fitted off a little bit,
Yeah.
just because the fatigue. If you don't go to bed at 9, I feel like eventually I was getting a little bit delirious with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
It's
did for a
more
little
the
while.
idea of what you're getting from it. And the idea
Yeah.
is having this amount of time when you get up to
Yep.
accomplish these things and
Yep.
getting into flow, as opposed to,
Flow. Yeah.
oh man, I gotta get up, I gotta do this, I
Yeah.
gotta like this, it's like, okay, I have this free time, nobody's gonna bother me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's
want to start the 5 p.m. club, as I've joked.
that's the entrepreneur club, man. That's okay. You finished
The
your day
5
job.
The
What are we
5
doing? Here we
p.m.
are.
club, yeah.
We're
The
talking right
day's
now.
over. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like the rock star. I got a bunch of
Yeah.
rock stars. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tommy Lee's in that group. We're
There we
we're the
go.
5 p.m. club. We don't do anything.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's called happy
Um,
hour. No, I'm kidding.
yeah,
They already have that club.
funny way. Um, do you have a nighttime routine?
My nighttime routine now is
Get the kid to
parenthood.
bed.
Yeah, that's it. No, but it's nice. She's usually in bed by
Yeah,
7:30 because we're very punctual people.
that's good.
But no, I do. It's that's the time when I spend with my wife, and then whenever before bed, I'll read a little bit more. That's also when I make a lot of content and stuff, and a lot of my reels. You're supposed to make them. You're supposed to
Yeah.
batch your reels, and you're supposed to do them in the best lighting. And I'm like, look, life's happening. I work, and I
Yeah.
have a baby to play with, and then
Yeah.
so mine are a little darker. Whatever.
Yeah, nobody cares about that.
That's another thing.
The only
Nobody
thing people
cares.
really cares about is the content.
Yeah,
It's like people will get sucked into like, well, the
yeah,
audio's not there. It's like, as long as you have audio that's like decent, people will listen. If your
right.
audio is just like shh,
Yeah,
and you're hearing things, if you sound like an old AM
not
radio,
pleasant.
then
Yeah,
then yes,
yeah.
that is not that's not gonna
It's
work.
not good. Yeah, yeah. But it's interesting.
Or if you
I did a little experiment. I was not an early adopter of videos or reels,
yeah
and it's still beyond my comfort zone. But in January, I was like, okay, I'm going to start showing my face more on this page, and
yeah
I'm going to transition to a lot more videos. And I mean, it's been insane the
yeah
growth that has happened. And you've probably seen it of several accounts that you follow, just how
yeah.
quickly that's growing. But it shows that there's a need for that, or there's a desire, and
There's something
they,
about seeing the face that like gives
yeah,
it, this thing, as opposed to this idea that like, at first, like when I was contacting people, I'm like,
anonymous.
is there
Yeah,
just like one person that's like doing all
yeah,
these? And there's just like one account and it's just like one guy
right.
and he's
All
not
of
really
them.
gonna respond to any of them.
Yeah,
He's just
yeah,
like, I was like, I command all of them.
right.
It's
I'm
the
the
same
Bookstagram
content.
king. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
um,
true, and that's and the accounts that I followed and that I looked around, and I was just like, I realized that I felt connected to them, even if we'd never had a conversation. And I was like, oh, okay, that's when the light bulb went off. And Gary Vee's always shouting it from the mountaintops, but
Gary Vee is such an awesome,
I was
like
like,
he
yeah,
talked. I saw a post where he was talking about how, just take some of your stuff and flip it, and
yeah, yeah.
somebody will buy it because they're collectors. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right.
Wow,
There are
I
a
like
lot of
that.
hoarders out there. And I've
That's
thought
true.
about that. I'm like, I got all these not Skechers, but what do you call them? I forget the name of the
Vans.
shoe, but they have numbers on them. And
Ah,
it's like, I'm sure there's probably somebody out there. And I'm like, I gotta, look into that. It's like, yeah, a lot of
put
your
it out
stuff
there.
could be, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I like that about Gary Vee. I haven't read his book, Crush It. I really want to read his book because he's such an interesting thinker. I mean, I saw the one post where the guy was like, I'm 40, and he was like, no, your life is not over, man.
It's half over.
You're
Yeah,
still, and I was like,
yeah,
that people need to hear that.
yeah,
Really, they really do need to hear that because they
yeah.
think like, if you didn't, get the lotto at like 20, you're like,
Right.
oh my God, I'm a failure. I'm not
Yeah.
Kylie Jenner, who
Right.
like, became a billionaire at
Right.
like 21. And it's like, yeah,
See,
but
I'm
it's
32. Yeah,
yeah,
and and in this space, a lot of the guys are between,
yeah.
Emiliano's what 17 now, 16, and
I
most of
know.
them are
Oh
like
yeah,
20 to
from the book readers
25.
club. Yeah,
Yeah,
I say that, I'm like, you're amazing
you're.
that you have this already figured out. Like, I wish at
Yeah,
16
I
I knew
know.
this, or like,
I know. I was chasing
this
girls.
is amazing. Like
Yeah,
he's already thinking, of this entrepreneurial venture, and like,
yeah,
here I was like, hey, I,
yeah.
can I buy
Exactly.
that video game?
Yeah, yeah. I
um,
tell them all the time.
so
I'm like, you're going places, man. But yeah,
I know he's great. He was the first person I interviewed from the book world, and I was just fascinated. It's like, wow, you're only 16. Amazing,
yeah.
So I like to end on like we already discussed meditation, so I'm not going to go back to
Okay.
that, but let's talk a little bit about I'm a big film guy.
Okay.
You've heard my podcast, so I'm going to talk about
Yeah. Yeah.
what movies do you like? What are
What
you
movies do I
watching?
like?
I know you
Um,
got the kid there, so it's hard to keep up with stuff. But yeah, what do you?
hey, I'll say for a long time in my life, I watched growing up. I watched a lot of musicals with my mom.
Oh, really?
Um, Seven Brides, Seven Brothers type things, and I loved them. And I think
Yeah.
that because of that, it helped me in the dating world whenever, because I was really into chick flicks growing up. I'm
Yeah.
not
Oh,
ashamed.
really?
I'm not ashamed to admit it. But no, now I really love a good comedy. I'm a
Yeah.
huge Will Ferrell fan.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm a big Will Smith fan, but mainly from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air,
Yeah.
a few of his movies. But when I was reading the book, I would go and watch some of them as he's talking about them, and I was just like, man, I'm not really feeling this movie. Like, I love this guy, but I can't. It was a blockbuster just because it was his name and how he marketed it, But
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
but
He's
yeah.
not really good. So what, all right, name some chick flicks. Let's
Oh man,
go into it.
anything with Matthew McConaughey, man, that guy was
Really?
until
Like
he
How to
changed his
Lose a Guy
ways.
in 10
Oh
days.
yeah,
That's a classic.
absolutely, definitely, maybe with Ryan, what's his name,
Oh,
Reynolds.
wow. Yeah, Ryan
Yeah,
Reynolds and
yeah,
yeah,
something,
the
anything
Little
with
Miss Sunshine girl.
Ryan
And
Gosling. Yeah, I'm really putting
yeah.
myself out there here for you on your
What about
podcast.
yeah, there you go. What about Mean Girls? What's that?
Hey, I saw it in Broadway.
Yeah.
We were visiting New York and they have a show on Broadway, so I went
Yeah.
ahead and watched that with my wife. Yeah, good
Yeah,
husband.
musical, good movie. I mean,
Yeah.
now I hear they're gonna do Clueless as a musical as
Oh
well.
wow.
So it's,
Okay. Yeah.
they're just gonna keep going. Yeah.
What is your like wheelhouse? Are you all
I
over?
I love, everything. I just saw the Batman. I thought that was
Yeah.
fantastic. They really
Are
took Batman in another way. But I
mm,
love Mean Girls. I could
yeah.
quote that movie from you.
Yeah.
Clueless.
Are you into like the cinematography or the script
I
writing?
am. I'm a very big cinematography kind of guy,
Okay.
like where I'm
Yeah.
looking at it and I'm like, I was watching The Life Aquatic of Steve Zissou by Wes Anderson and the Roy Tenenbaums. I was like looking at the symmetry of the way he films everything. It's just so perfect and tight. And he's got
Huh.
these bright colors and
Yeah.
it's such a unique, I'm really attracted to the color. It's like
Wow.
the movie Drive, he uses a lot of
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
technique color of that
Mm.
pink and purples. And I'm like, a lot of people don't do that. The reason he uses that is because he's actually colorblind. So he has to have these vibrant colors in order to
Wow.
see them.
Well,
And
thank goodness
it's,
it turned out nice.
yeah,
What if-
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
could
That
have
could,
gone
yeah, it could be
sour.
a,
But
a
yeah.
horrible,
Yeah.
idea. So
That's cool. That's cool.
what is this?
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody can
Oh
tell him
yeah,
because he's the producer. It's like
yeah, yeah.
yeah. That's cool,
Well,
man.
dude, I want to say thank you so much for doing this. This has
Yeah,
been great. I
absolutely.
mean, time
Yeah.
just flew.
Thank you for
But
having me. Man,
how could people? Yeah.
that's what I love about these
What
things
was
is we're just having a conversation and about things that we're passionate about. And maybe it resonates with
exactly?
people. If it doesn't, we had a great conversation.
I know this was fun.
I enjoyed it.
What? How can people reach you?
Right now I'm solely on Instagram. I know
Cool.
a lot of people are all over different platforms, but that's where I'm at. If you
Awesome.
listen to this, shoot me a DM. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about your favorite books, and I'm always
Yeah.
open. Always open.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yes,
This has
sir.
been Colin at
Yeah.
the Reader's Recap, and I will see you next time.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Okay, that about does it. I want to thank Colin from At the Reader's Recap for doing this. I thought this was a fascinating conversation we had. And once again, you can find me at Justin Yance. If you like the podcast, please subscribe either at Spotify or Apple Podcasts, whichever way you find your podcasts. I'm working on getting YouTube ready so you can watch it there. And I will see you next time on the DMF.